Kaedama in Japan is a second order of noodles you can request in some places if you'd like more to eat. Maybe you have some broth or sauce left. Maybe you're still hungry. Maybe you just want to enjoy the taste or texture. Point is, you want more. And this is exactly how I feel about Tenchu. I didn't grow up with Tenchu. My earliest memory of it was people playing Wrath of Heaven on TV circa 2004. But I didn't have a console at the time and none of my friends who did had any of the games. My proper introduction to the series was the Stealth Docs video about the class of '98, but I still wouldn't actually play the games until years later when I got my PSP and a little game called Time of the Assassins. Since then I've gone through the entire series and most spin-offs and it's just not enough. So I started looking for similar games to fill the void. What I'd like to do with this video is share some of the games that scratch the Tenchu itch for me. I'll only talk about games or series I've actually played, and I'll keep it focused on games set in East Asia or fantasy settings inspired by Japanese folklore, so it won't be exhaustive or definitive. But hopefully it can help you if you too are looking for more Tenchu. Return of the Ninja may have been inspired by Tenchu, and it's a rare stealth game on the Game Boy Color, along with the much more famous Metal Gear Solid Ghost Babel. It plays much like the early Castlevanias. Levels you can play in any order, where you find new gear and eventually have to beat a boss. But enemies will only start attacking after they spot you, and you get to use cool ninja tools like socks that let you walk on the ceiling, a cloth that slows down your fall, or sandals that let you jump super high. Once you get the hang of it, it's not too hard, but I'd still recommend it mostly if you're into old school platformers. Still, I felt it deserved a mention because it's a rare example of a ninja-themed platformer that's not set in the modern day and where you actually get to use stealth. Mark of the Ninja, on the other hand, is a game I can and do recommend to everyone, especially newcomers to stealth. Its use of shadows and climbing keeps you in control in every situation, and visual cues make it easy to know who can and can't spot you. One interesting feature of the game is that guards can become terrorized if they stumble upon the dead bodies of their colleagues, making their moves erratic and prompting them to start panic shooting. Pair this gameplay with gorgeous hand-drawn animations and you end up with a truly unique stealth game. I just wish it wasn't set in modern times, because even if I enjoy games like this or Ronin, part of the appeal of Tenchu for me is the semi-fantasy, semi-historical setting. Good news is, Assassin's Creed Chronicles China is almost exactly the same thing, but set in 16th century China. This was the first of a trilogy, and I have to mention that it's also very similar to Assassin's Creed 2 Discovery on the DS. No morale mechanic this time, and your movements are more in line with the series' usual parkour, but the items you unlock as you progress through the game enable you to cling to the ceiling, distract enemies with firecrackers, etc. Combined with Xiao Jun's black getup, it's really easy to forget you're not technically a ninja. Shadow Tactics Blades of the Shogun actually takes place in Japan about 100 years later during the early days of the Tokugawa shogunate. In it, you control a group of 5 characters in various configurations. Hayato, your classic ninja, Mugen, a sneaky samurai, Takuma, an elderly sharpshooter with a pet tanuki, Yuki, a scrawny thief and poacher who uses deadly traps, and Aiko, a spy who can use disguises to hide in plain sight. A real-time strategy game with no pose may seem like a weird choice for this list, but hear me out. Whenever the game lets you solo a mission with one of your agile characters, especially at night, it has shades of Tenchu. You get a grappling hook, silent takedowns, a variety of tools, and that's all it takes. So far this list has been chronological, but now that we're talking about 3D games, we'll have to travel back in time a bit. Red Ninja, End of Honor, is probably the very first Tenchu clone. You have almost all the same moves and then some. In addition to the usual jumping, climbing and wall hugging, you can build up speed when running in a straight line, and you get to perform wall runs. The key meter is also replaced by a mini radar, and the grappling hook lets you adjust the length of the rope and swing across gaps. It's way more of a platform game, likely borrowing as much from Tenchu as from Prince of Persia: The Sands of Time. Kurenai, your character, also gets to seduce guards for easy kills, but this is pretty unreliable and it stops working altogether in the second half of the game. The main thing that differentiates it from other games though is the Tetsugen, a metallic wire that can be fitted with a blade or a bludgeon and lets Kurenai fight at a distance, often to gruesome effect. And this is both the best and the worst thing in the game. It makes fights a lot more interesting, but it also has clunky special attacks, which you're required to use to beat the bosses. I firmly believe that, given more time and playtesting, Red Ninja could have become a proper rival to Tenchu. The ideas were great, they just failed in execution. Shinobido Way of the Ninja was a slightly more successful example, possibly because it was made by Tenchu's original creators, Acquire, after they had lost the rights to the series. It's also swapped the key meter for another system, eye symbols which have the benefit of letting you know how many enemies are nearby. Just like Red Ninja, it added wall runs, again probably due to the popularity of Prince of Persia, but it didn't stop there. You get to pick up anything from weapon to mushrooms to crates to doors, etc. And this time you get to choose to work for either of 3 leaders. I never completed the game and lost interest because the missions were getting repetitive, but I had a lot of fun with its PSP spin-off, Tales of the Ninja, which is a very minimalistic take on its PS2 counterpart. I enjoyed its shorter, emptier levels as pure arcade fun, except there's awful missions where you have to protect an armoured cart. There's also a second game on the Vita, Revenge of Zen, which I've heard great things about but haven't played yet. Now I don't like this series as much as Tenchu, but it's really the one that came the closest in terms of atmosphere. Mini Ninjas is probably not the first thing that comes to mind when you think Tenchu. And unfortunately it's a game that inadvertently punishes stealth by tying your character's progression to combat. It does have stealth kills, but these alert all surrounding enemies and more often than not force you into a fight. Some characters have abilities that alleviate this. Suzume can hypnotize enemies with her flute for easy kills, Shun can shoot arrows or rockets to fight at a distance, and Tora runs fast enough to pull off hit-and-run attacks, but it's still not stealth. So why include it in this list at all? When you disregard what the game wants you to do, to sneak around in the countryside, or find secret routes to infiltrate castles, walk on tightropes, observe from the rooftops and avoid confrontation, there's actually something of Tenchu. Aragami has the atmosphere. Aragami 2 has the gameplay. The first game in its DLC, Nightfall, had great stories about revenge and friendship. No proper climbing or grappling hook, but your characters have powers that let you teleport from shadow to shadow, which makes up for the lack of speed and the fact they die in one hit. The sequel imitates the gameplay of PS2-era Tenchu games, with the addition of ledge and corner kills, and the grappling hook is replaced by the ability to teleport to anything you can climb. Problem is, it's also a very repetitive game, with reused levels, filler missions, and a rather bland narrative that failed to capture my interest. In a perfect world, we would have had a third game combining the strength of both its predecessors, but sadly developer Lensworks has put all projects on hold indefinitely in 2023. Some of the same people have been working on Ereban Shadow Legacy, so I hope they'll make a comeback someday. So far, we've been talking mostly about indies or older games, but we still have a handful of recent AAAs to consider. Now, I didn't really want to talk about Sekiro Shadows Die Twice, because it's not a game I enjoy or feel like including in this list, but considering the circumstances that led to its creation, I guess I can't really avoid it. At some point in its development, this was supposed to be an actual sequel to Tenchu, and I still have mixed feelings about that. On the one hand, I don't much like the idea of slapping the Tenchu name on a completely different game, so I appreciate From Software's honesty in the matter. On the other hand, it wouldn't take much to use the same elements and make it more like Tenchu, so I wish they had actually tried. A common criticism from Tenchu fans is that this game is too similar to the Souls series to really scratch the Tenchu itch. But as a fan of Souls games myself, I miss all the stuff I enjoyed in Demon's Souls, Dark Souls, Bloodborne as well. No weapon variety, no spells, no stats, no summons. This is just a hardcore hack and slash game with stealth elements, and even if I can acknowledge that the grappling hook is awesome, it's not enough for my Kaedama. A game that comes much closer is Ghost of Tsushima. which is set during the late Kamakura period and has you play as a samurai. As one of the only survivors of a defensive force against the Mongol invasion, you learn to be sneaky in order to win against a much stronger opponent. Your ability to climb is limited compared to the other games I have mentioned so far. There's less emphasis on the grappling hook, and the settings means you'll rarely find yourself in urban environments to jump from rooftop to rooftop, but the stealth takedowns are satisfying and you get a variety of tools to play with. I'm taking points off for the anachronistic poetry though. When I started writing the script for this video, I didn't have Rise of the Ronin, and I just wanted to mention it because I've seen several people say it reminded them of Tenchu. Since then I've had the game for a few days and I think I have a little more to tell. This game is set at the very end of the Edo period and lets you fully customize not just one, but two characters. In terms of atmosphere, I'd say the cutscenes definitely have something of Tenchu, but the gameplay is very different and much more focused on combat. Stealth is an option and there are some cool abilities to take out enemies from the safety of bushes or rooftops, but patrol routes are very simple. Enemies go from point A to point B, rinse and repeat, and that's when they move at all. In terms of movements, you get a grappling hook that's neat for reaching rooftops quickly, but you can't hang from ledges, your character just auto-climbs. You can't hug walls and peek around corners either, but you do get to hide in bushes and tall grass by crouching. Really though, the main appeal is the combat. Assassin's Creed Shadows has a lot in common with Tenchu, but it feels very different. Having completed the game just a few days ago, I think I can say this is now my favourite shinobi simulator. As Naoe the ninja, you get to use the grappling hook to reach high places quickly or swing across gaps. You can hide in the shadows, crawl under floorboards, breathe from a reed in shallow water. Even the combat with a katana, tanto or kusarigama encourages you to use hit and run tactics. It's as if the Shinobi no Mono films had been turned into a game and I absolutely love it. One unique feature is how seasons affect stealth. In winter the nights are longer, vegetation you can hide into is more scarce and icicles hang from the ledges of roofs and can break and make noise or harm enemies. In autumn, fog can reduce your enemy's visibility and rain can muffle your footsteps. In summer, the rain turns to tempests and tall grass may be too dry to conceal your presence. In spring, the vegetation is more lush, providing more hiding places, and strong winds can muffle the sounds of your footsteps just like rain. Aside from Naoe, you can also play as Yasuke, the samurai, who's less adept at stealth. He does get to lie prone and hide in tall grass. He even gets to climb regular walls, very slowly. But his main thing is combat. He gets an arquebus, a bow and a long katana, but as a former Nobushi main, I favoured the naginata. At one point you can unlock his own special assassination move for stealth takedowns, but it's trickier to pull off and less versatile than Naoe's. Anyway, the game lets you choose which character you want to play as 90% of the time, so I'll let you guess which of them I played the most. And that's it for released games, but I have one more to talk about. That one is literally just called Ninja Game, and I first played it about a year ago on itch.io, but an updated demo recently made it to Steam, and now I'm really excited for the full release, because this game was clearly made by someone who loves Tenchu. It makes me think of another Acquire game which I haven't played yet, called Kamiwaza, Way of the Thief, which doesn't shy away from silliness in making you play as a master thief. In Ninja Game, your ninja can carry a ridiculous amount of weapons on her person, strategically place banana peels on the path of enemies, fast roll everywhere, etc. Silliness aside though, it's a very satisfying little ninja game with open-ended level design and you can see a lot of care and attention went into it. I can't wait to see the full game. And that's it! I hope this video was interesting to you and I'll see you if I make another one. Bye!